And it's always fantastic when Brandon Darby of the Breitbart Cartel Chronicles, big cheese editor over there, joins us to educate us on several things. Okay, Brandon, they're handing over 26 cartel leaders. Mexico is. What is this?
Am I supposed to call you Jesse or Bronco?
Bronco, please. Let's stick with Bronco, please.
I'll call you Bronco, Jesse. Bronco,
Thanks,
Jesse. How's that?
Thanks.
No, when you did that, there's a guy on Twitter named Gay Patriot. And so I got CC at Gay Patriot just because gay's in his name. It just sounded funny. I had to do it. I'm sorry.
That's wrong.
No, okay.
That's wrong.
Okay, to the seriousness, here's what just happened, okay? This is the second time that the Mexican government has handed over these big dogs in various cartels, right? The first time they handed over big dogs in a bunch of cartels in the Sinaloa cartel, but keep in mind that the main cartel, this guy El Mencho, it's the Cartel Jalisco, right? CJ&G, that's the names of them. Their current Secretary of Defense has very close relationships with Mencho, right? They're very close. He is the one that is controlling the black markets in Mexico. That is the dominant cartel in Mexico, Cartel Jalisco, right? So they hand over all of these people. The first time Trump starts to threaten the government with tariffs, they hand over a bunch of people, one of whom had brutally killed a DE agent named Kiki Camarena in the 80s. It took that long for them to give us that guy, right? They literally let this guy stay in Mexico. They let him out of prison. He started running a cartel again, and they put him back in prison of sorts, but he had this wonderful life. And they finally handed him over after 3 decades, right? Because of Trump. Otherwise, that family of that DE agent never would have had justice if it weren't for what Trump did in threatening Mexico. So they hand over these people. They're like, see, we're helping you, and we're going to cooperate with you. But what they did was they only cooperated, really, any big cooperation was against all of Mencho and Cartel Jalisco's enemies. So really what they did was they had the USA help their cartel buddy and take out all of his enemies. So he kept taking over more and more in Mexico. So the Trump administration wises up and says, hey, you're not going to do this to us. So then they say, we're going to hit you with more tariffs, and we're going to authorize U.S. military action in Mexico. And all of a sudden, Mexico's government says, oh, here are these 26 more top Sinaloa and Jalisco cartel operators. But all the while, they will not give us, and they will not go after the leader of Cartel Jalisco, who is paying many people in the leadership of Mexico. Do you see how this works? Do you see this game that's being played? Awesome that they handed these people over. Not awesome that they won't go after El Mencho. We can find Mencho. I promise you the U.S. government has plenty of information as to where he is. But Mexico's protecting him. Anytime that there's a chance to get him, somebody tips him off the day before, in the Mexican government, and because we have to cooperate with the cartel-connected government of Mexico. And that's what this is about. This is them saying, hey, we're doing something. We're showing you some action. Please don't try to start doing unilateral military action in our country, because if you do, there's really not a darn thing we can do about it.
Okay, so again, we're speaking with Brandon Darby, Breitbart. This is exactly why I wanted to have him on, because I was curious. I see the headline, and immediately I'm curious. Brandon, before we get to other parts of what you just said, why not give this guy up? I know you've said before he is friends, I guess personal friends with, I guess, their Secretary of Defense or something like that. But is it fear? Is it friendship? No. Is it just simple bribery?
Money. It's money. Everything is for sale in Mexico. So that is really good if you're a bad guy and you can buy your way out of justice. But if somebody comes in with a larger economic incentive, then they can buy justice for you and get you incarcerated. You see how this works?
Hmm.
And everything is for sale in Mexico. It's the most complicated thing you've ever seen. If you try to do any business dealing in Mexico, this is how it goes down. You start doing it, it looks like it's going to work, and then at the last minute they go, well, there's this one guy, and he wants, $20,000, or he can't, he can stop it. And so you're like, okay, all right, $20,000. All right. Yes, he can be in the deal for $20,000. No problem. And then it moves a little further. And then just on the last day, you think you're closing the deal. And they go, well, this guy really doesn't want this to go through, but there's this other guy who's his advisor, and he says that if we hire him as an advisor for 100,000, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is the most
Mm.
insane thing you've ever seen. It's how business works in Mexico. It's how it works, you know, um, and this is how it works on the highest levels as well. So again, they're still protecting El Mencho. They're still protecting Cartel Jalisco. They're still acting like they're helping us fight cartels while they, for the most part, only go after the enemies of El Mencho. So we're clearing his path, right? And the Trump administration is starting to have enough of it, and they're like, "All right, let's up the ante. We're gonna authorize unilateral military action, and we're gonna hit you with more tariffs because you're not doing enough." So they say, "Okay, here's a little more." And then we're going to come back again and say, you're not doing enough. And they're going to say, here's a little more. And they're going to draw this out to where Trump is no longer in office. Whoever's in there next does not care about this issue. They're just going to say they care about it, like Democrats and Republicans have for decades, right? And they're not, that's what they're waiting it out. That's what he's doing. He's very intelligent, very smart, knows what he's doing. And he is paying everyone and waiting this out, waiting this administration out. However, it is also good that we are getting these people, but mind you not, none of these people, not the first tranche and not this tranche, none of these cartel operators and leaders would be facing U.S. justice for what they've done to our communities if it were not for Trump threatening tariffs and threatening military action. And do not forget that fact. Do not let that slip off your brain. Anyone listening.
Speaking with Brandon Darby, Breitbart, I have so many more questions now based off of these other things. Let me just ask this really briefly, Brandon, before I go to break and then attempt to strangle you to keep you here for one more segment. This El Mencho guy, you've mentioned Mencho several times. What's his background? Where'd he come from?
Well, okay, so Cartel Jalisco was part of the Sinaloa Federation. I've talked about this on the show before, not this particular but the concept. The Sinaloa cartel is really a federation, right? It's really a bunch of different criminal groups who are all, they agree to be under the banner of the Sinaloa cartel. Okay. Um, but Mencho decided, he was a leader in Jalisco. He decided that he was going to start his own cartel. He was going to break his cartel away from the Sinaloa Federation, and that started a war between Cartel Jalisco now and the rest of the Sinaloa Federation. The U.S. government, with the help of the Mexican government, has taken out several of the Sinaloa leadership. So now the Sinaloa cartel, the Sinaloa Federation, is a bunch of groups fighting each other, right? And they have very limited federal power any longer. Some of them still have a lot of power, but it's going to be waning as years go by, right? For sure, because we've done the same thing that we did to the Gulf Cartel, which is we decapitated them so many times that now they're really a bunch of glorified gangbangers operating under the banner of the Gulf Cartel, but really there's just a bunch of, there's probably 10 different leaders of the Gulf Cartel, right? These different
Yeah,
factions that
yeah,
oftentimes are fighting each other. So, and it's much easier to deal with that than it is to deal with an El Mencho or a Sinaloa cartel when it was in its heyday, because they have access to control in the federal government, right? So when
yeah.
you deal with the Gulf Cartel now, they might have some municipal employees or workers. They have some journalists. They have some people in the state government, but not as many, not the governor any longer, right? They don't have the kind of power, and that's because of the decapitation approach. And that's what's
Mhm.
happening with the Sinaloa. But so Mincho broke away and said, "Hey, my criminal group is now Cartel Jalisco, and it's no longer under your leadership. And from now on, I make all the money, and I'm going to be so brutal that all of you are going to be afraid to mess with me." And that's kind of what's happened.
He is Brandon Darby. Brandon, do you have just time for a couple more questions after the break?
I'd love to. I'm have a cup of coffee. I'm chilling. I'm all about
Oh,
it.
perfect. We are back with Brandon Darby of the Great Breitbart Cartel Chronicles. Brandon, okay, you mentioned the Sinaloa Federation and how we continue to take out the heads of this. How significant was the taking out of El Chapo to the disintegration, the slow disintegration of the Sinaloa Federation? I don't know, El Chapo, was he some unbelievable seminal figure, or was he just another guy?
He was an unbelievable seminal figure. It's a big deal. I would say at this point, it's a big deal to do, but again, we have to understand the context. The context is another guy sprung up, another guy started paying more people and politicking better, and then the Mexican government was willing to go after their former boy because everything is for sale, right? And he did the job better. He did the politicking and the bribing better. And so then the Mexican government was willing to go after him. Now we're at a point where we can't play two people off of each other because there's no one as powerful as El Mencho any longer, right? So there's no one that powerful. So we can't take that approach. So yes, that was a lovely approach. Uh, at the time, under the specific circumstances, getting El Chapo here was a big deal. Getting his son here was a big deal. There's a lot of these big deals that are happening, but they're still protecting the biggest cartel figure in Mexico. And El Chapo, make no mistake, Mexico would not have gone after El Chapo and helped us go after El Chapo were they not doing the bidding of El Chapo's rival. Get it?
Yeah, I
So
do.
that's where we are. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a fragile nation that's literally listed as a fragile nation, not a failed nation, but a fragile state, right? That is what Mexico is, a fragile narco state. And that is, there are a lot of good people in Mexico, and there are a lot of good people in Mexico's leadership, or trying to be in Mexico's leadership, in Mexico's law enforcement communities. But make no mistake, there are a lot more who are not good when it comes to the leadership of that country, because some of them are in those situations so they can make money. Some of them are in those situations to make a change, and then they're told, you want plato o plomo, like you want silver or lead. We can either make you rich or we can kill you and all of your children and your grandparents and your wife. And so they choose to go the dirty route, because they don't have an FBI to call or a 911 to call. They don't have, if any time they call the government, the cartel knows they did, you know, and a lot of those people in government work for whichever cartel we're dealing with at the time or talking about. So it's a very ugly situation. There's no pretty way out of this. There's, not to tie it into another issue, but it's kind of like dealing with Hamas. Like there's no pretty way to do it. If you're going to try to get Hamas, there's no pretty way to do it. There's no nice way to go about this. Okay. And we're in the same situation with Mexico in that regard. It's going to be ugly. There's going to be bloodshed. There's going to be people fighting for control once other people are gone. There's going to be military aircraft shot down, as there have been, or there's going to be drone explosions, and there's going to be all types of things that resemble guerrilla warfare in Mexico. And as there already are, right? People only have to go to Breitbart to read about landmines and the usage of landmines and
Ugh.
other IEDs. And it's going to be ugly, but we're going to get through the other side. And in the process of that, regardless of your opinions on the drug war, There's going to be a lot less illicit fentanyl, right? Killing the people who are the most vulnerable amongst us in our communities. And we will see more success if we stay the course that we are currently on. I don't believe that we can stay the course because, as you know, Jesse, you're in a position where you probably hear a lot, see a lot, and deal with a lot of political leaders. There's something wrong with most of the people who get into politics I think they're sociopaths or at least narcissistic so much that they're close to that. And do I think that they're going to have the stones that Trump has shown? No, I don't. And I hope they do, but I don't have faith in it. That's why I'm like, I am 100% supportive of being as aggressive right now as we can be.
Yep.
As aggressive as we can be.
Let's hammer the gas while we have the steering wheel still. Brandon Darby, go. If you're not reading the Cartel Chronicles, you're not getting this stuff all the time until I drag poor Brandon over here with a cup of coffee. Brandon, thank you, brother. As always, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for educating us again.